Here I find you. I think I can love you.
All right, thanks for participating, you guys, in the How Strong podcast. So you guys know that the How Strong podcast really focuses on marketing and brand. We've got a lot of really interesting people that we lead up to with conversations about brand and marketing. I'll give you guys an example. So we have this Olympic boxer named Tiger. He was a boxer in 1984 Olympics. He's from Nigeria. So really interesting background, how he got to where he is. So the premise is, how strong did he have to be to become a boxer? And what did it take for him to go from Nigeria to the US to the Olympics? Prior to that, we talk about sports marketing and what sports marketing is and why would you use it and how do you use it? And is your company in the process of doing something with sports marketing? So we done a ton of podcasts. What I wanted to do for this particular podcast was get you guys involved from a non-marketing perspective. So Ron's an attorney and David's not. And
no.
You're not an attorney, right?
No. And I don't do much of anything, as it turns out.
So I wanted to start off because David, if you see David in real life, and this was really funny. I was talking to Ron about you, Dave, and I go, this guy looks like he's walked out of the 1800s, and he's trying to get some sarsaparilla, and his horse is outside, and David comes out, and he's just this amazing, smart guy. And Ron, I've known Ron forever, and Ron is equally intelligent, equally intimidating if you actually go up to him. I actually went to school with Ron. He and I were in the same fraternity. We both went to Arizona State. And,
goes that far back, huh?
Oh yeah, like he's known me since. He knows who I am. That's the issue. Is he not only knows me, he knows who I am inside, which is terrible. Yeah. But we had this podcast. We have this podcast tomorrow with John Urenday, and he is a filmmaker. And his genre is horror, which is interesting because he's only done horror and he's got an interesting background. And I wanted to talk to you guys about that as well, because yesterday we actually did a podcast with product placement and the idea of getting your product into a movie or a television show. And we came up with a really good, interesting commentary. I really wasn't aware. I've been on the marketing side. I've done product placement before, but the science behind it was really interesting. And I was talking with David earlier, the idea that product placement looks different depending on the genre of movie. So I went straight for horror. I don't see a lot of product placement in horror movies. And David and I were talking about Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You don't really, I don't know if it was a still chainsaw, but you don't really brag about how well it carves through meat. No. Or through bone. It's really just trees. So is that product placement? And it was interesting on that perspective. And then it was interesting on the other side, which is anything below PG-13, you get a lot of product placement. And anything, and I'll use Quentin Tarantino because this came up yesterday, which was in a lot of Quentin Tarantino's movies, because of the rating and because of the content, a lot of companies will not use product placement in his movies. So a lot of the stuff that you see, and we talked about it too, a lot of the products in the movies aren't real. They're not real products. And I always thought that I think it was Red Cherry. I think it was a Red Cherry cigarette company. But that was a product that didn't exist. And Quentin Tarantino put it into his movie. And it's Red Apple cigarettes and Big Kahuna Burger. A lot of the products in his movies, and I thought they were just in terms of time periods because they were not present day, that these might just be cigarettes I wasn't aware of in the 1970s or 50s. And as it turns out, a lot of the products in his movies are products they come up with because they can't use products from normal companies. And the other conversation, and this is really where you guys come in, completely different perspective. The idea of, so Tron or David, I want you to give me a villain. Who's one of your favorite villains
of all time, or
of all time? Well, that's what I'm saying. I had the same conversation yesterday. It's like saying, "What's your favorite movie?" If I say villain, who do you think of?
You.
Oh, one in a
You know,
movie.
Oh, well, fair enough.
yeah, wonderful. You know, I would have to lean towards like Darth Vader or
Oh, perfect.
the Emperor.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. So
yeah.
you have a. I'll say Jason.
Mm,
So here's where it gets tricky. So when you do product placement for horror, and I wouldn't say James Bond is horror, but you do have villains in James Bond who wear Omega watches, and they're looking at their watches so that building falls down and it ticks, 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 and the thing blows up. It's okay to be a villain and do product placement if it's a smart, well dressed, intellectual villain. But if it's Freddy Krueger or Jason, product placement doesn't touch horror that way. But you can if you're a villain. And I thought it was interesting because they both do the same thing. One does it more brutally than the other. One is a sniper from a mile away and shoots you from a garage. The other one hacks you up with a hammer.
yeah.
But no one's talking about who made that hammer. So it was interesting to get that perspective. And then we leaned into, and this is where Ron comes in. And I want to tell, just so you guys get to know each other a little bit. When we talk about movies, one of my favorite memories of Ron, we were at a theater in Arizona and we were watching Braveheart. And I don't know how many times we've seen that movie, but I think when Braveheart came out, Ron and I went to the movie theater with a bunch of other people. And it's a quiet movie in places. And Ron comes back from the concession stand. And 2 seconds later, I hear, oh shit. And it sounds like a waterfall. It sounds like, because back in the day, the floors used to just be at an angle. They were not like
Yeah.
leveled down.
Right. You just dropped a big gulp, right? It wasn't anything worse.
And you can hear it. Like we weren't all the way in the back, but we were far enough that you could actually hear the ice trickling down. It was like
rushing down.
It was like in the
Yeah.
movie, but there was no
awful.
water. And Ron gets up, and the second Ron gets up, the theater lights go on. There was like an issue with the film, and he gets up and he's filled with Coke all over his body, like he was trying to sneak out and clean up. And as
The
soon as he
bottom of
stood
it
up, the
dropped
lights
out. I didn't even spill it. The bottom of one of those giant dropped, and just all at once.
Like the cup.
The
It
cup. So I was
wasn't
still
like
holding
the
the cup.
tray.
Yeah,
Oh
the
man,
bottom of the cup just fell out,
Yeah,
that's
it was
terrible.
and you could hear it rushing
it
till it
was
hit the screen.
Yeah, it was the auditorium. We thought he had did something to the theater. Like so much water went down to the edge of the screen that some wires got tripped or something. But that eventually didn't happen. But it was really funny. So when we talk about movies, I'm always drawn to that memory of Ron, and then we got into a conversation that we want to talk to you about too. Is when we're talking about product placement, we're talking about movies. And especially for John tomorrow, I'm going to ask him this question too, because that's how he makes his movies, and he prefers that genre. I've had this conversation with David. I haven't had it with Ron yet, and I'm curious. So I only picked Poltergeist because I would lean towards The Exorcist, but it's interesting. I won't watch that movie again. I actually bought the 25th and the 20th anniversary edition of that movie, and it's still in the plastic. I won't watch it. I want to own it, but I won't watch it.
Yeah. So what strikes you as so great that you wanted it?
I remember watching that movie behind the couch while my mom was watching it because I wasn't allowed to see it.
Oh
And
yeah.
she didn't know I was there, and it blew my mind. I was like, oh shit, things are real now.
Yeah.
And it scared me, and I had no one to turn to because I wasn't supposed to be watching it. Like normally I would go to my mom, and if I told her I was watching it, she'd fuck me up. I mean, I shouldn't have been up, and I should have been watching it. That's just how she was.
It's two fouls. Yeah.
Yeah, but do I admit that I watched it? No, I just go in there and don't sleep for a month because I'm fucking scared. But so the Exorcist for me was very, very real at the time. And what's interesting is my kids saw it, and then I heard that when the 25th anniversary edition came out and kids were watching in the movies, they were laughing because I don't think to your point, and you said it a while ago, David, is that the effects of that movie visually compared to with what you see today, it really changes the dynamic. But back then, the way I see The Exorcist in terms of the way it was filmed, that's how I see the 1980s. I don't remember seeing the 80s in high definition. I remember seeing them very pixelated. It doesn't, my eyes see it the same way you'd see that movie today. That's how I view back then. It wasn't clear. And,
Yeah.
and I think maybe, the bed scene, those things are probably not as offensive now when you see it, like heads chopped off and people's skin pulled apart. It's not really that significant anymore. But what I did though is this conversation, Ron, goes to if Poltergeist were a real movie and you were in that movie, at what point do you leave that house? And how long is that movie you're in? So I was watching Poltergeist today and I went through a checklist of items. So and the premise is that these two adults in the movie are smoking weed. So I already know at what level comfort they're at. So things that would freak me out may not freak them out. And in the 4-minute and 30-second mark of the movie, the dad's asleep, and Carol Ann is looking at the TV, and the dad wakes up, and he sees her talking to the television set saying, "I'm 5 years old," and she starts answering these questions. And I'm like, well, for me, the movie doesn't continue past that mark because the next day my kid's at a hospital. She's going to talk to someone. So the rest of the movie doesn't happen. She's hospitalized, and maybe it's me overreacting. David had a good point. Maybe you're more sympathetic. It's just the first time it's happened, or maybe she's not completely whacked out of her mind yet.
And even if you still go to the hospital, you're still living in the house. The kid's coming back. It's your observation at best. They're not going to like lock her up for 6 weeks. They're going to say, yeah, she seems okay.
Yeah, but in this movie but in this movie now, the movie is she doesn't get sucked into the television. She goes to the hospital, and then we talk to the doctors, and they're like, there's nothing we can do. She says she's talked to somebody in the television, and that's a whole other movie.
Oh, but you come back to the house, so you could pick up kind of where you left off and be like,
but for me, I'm taking the kid to the hospital, but that doesn't make me leave the house. That makes me worried about my daughter.
But the house is still a problem. You still got to deal with that. We know how it ends. So
we do, but not at the beginning though. So the other one is
Carol Ann strike one. You go back to the house. She's at the hospital. They stack the goddamn kitchen furniture. I'm out. My movie is about 9 minutes long.
So no, I'll tell you how long your movie is. Your movie is at 29 minutes.
Okay.
And that's just when so this is the problem. It could be 29 minutes or 29 minutes and 15 seconds. At the 29-minute mark, the chairs around the table just go out. She then goes into the kitchen under the cupboard, turns around, and all the tables are stacked. Oh, I'm sorry, all the chairs are stacked on the table.
That's a pretty important 15 seconds.
Yeah. So I'm out then.
Yes.
After that, I don't care what happens in the movie. There's a portion of the movie where the wife's excited and her husband comes home and she puts the baby on the kitchen floor and it glides. Yeah, I don't see that. I'm done. I'm at my mom's house. I don't. There's a for sale sign. There's nothing's happening there.
Yeah, old houses. Oh wait, this was a new construction. You're right. There shouldn't be any slanted floors that kids go sliding across.
So I thought about that, and I'm like, how shitty of a construction company is it that a 20-pound baby can glide at an angle? I mean, that's a pretty steep correction that has to happen. Like if you're dropping stuff, it's going down fairly quickly. Something's wrong with the floor. But I'm done at that movie.
The kind of construction company that would build new houses right on top of a goddamn Indian burial ground. Right. Maybe one of those would not pay attention to the angles.
Right.
That's
they removed the headstones, right? They didn't move the bodies.
They didn't move the bodies. They knew it when they were there.
The other one that we talked about, this is another personal thing, and this is just me, and I'll tell you about my experience with moving to Texas. It actually is sort of relevant to this.
I hope it has ghosts because...
Well, I'm going to tell you, it's much more than that. So for this particular movie, at the... when we talk about the doll, that's not going to make me move the house. It's more of a judgment call against the parents about why they have a clown doll that's 4 feet tall. I don't think if you've seen this movie in a while, that doll is big. When I saw it, Yeah, you think it's small, and then it actually sits on a chair and it's 4 feet tall. Like its feet are on the ground. It's huge, and I'm like, well, that's not happening here. So I wouldn't leave the house. I'd question why they'd buy a doll that big and scary. It's when the kid Robbie climbs the tree. That's at 9 minutes and 27 seconds. I wouldn't have bought the house because of the tree.
That tree was creepy.
Yeah, so I would be like that. There's a decision there that makes me think: is there another house I could get? The issue, though, is that this was a planned community, and the husband was part of the planned community.
Right.
So maybe he didn't have a decision. He specifically said he picked that place because the tree was going to protect them. So he's fucked up already. That tree is going to kill everybody in the house. That tree is not nice. It's not an apple tree. It's not a peach tree. It's a big dead tree. There's no foliage on it, and it's got a mouth on the side of it. There's no way.
I didn't remember the details of the tree.
It's dead. It's like where people were hanged.
That's a poor design choice, I suppose, for the gardening. But
it's part of the landscaping deal. You get the dead, ugly tree, and it costs you $5,000 to get it. I don't know.
But I lean towards that. In the Adams kind of aesthetic for a house. I would really like that kind of like look. The big tree, the older house. Everything looks a little gloomy. I could live in that. Okay.
If the whole house if the whole neighborhood was like that, and it was like in the 17th century, and right. Every house looked exactly like that, and the person down the street had the plague. I mean, that's okay. It all fits in. Right. But not
in California.
No, not in California. But so in Texas, when I came here, they showed me houses everywhere, and the houses out here are big, and they have a lot of lots. And we were looking at an older home, and I remember driving the realtor. We're following the realtor, and we're driving right behind him. And I looked to the right of me, and there's a cemetery. It's like maybe 8 plots in there, old tombstones. We ended up pulling up to the house, looking at it. It's on 20 acres, and it's just terrible. And I'm like, I don't need to go inside. It's just not the right property for me. I can already tell. And the realtor's like, okay, well, let's just take a look. And my wife's like, yeah, this is fantastic. And I'm like, so we already know that's an issue if she loves it and I don't. But I go through the tour, and I said, hey, just a question. There's a cemetery sort of near the property. What's the story? And he's like, well, there's a fence around the cemetery, so you'll own it. So I said, so the property comes with that cemetery? And he's like, yeah. And I go, well, that's just not going to happen. So we're out. And
is it still a crime if you were to dig them up?
I'm not doing any of that. Then I'm a movie. Then that's how this movie starts. I put a pool over it, and my whole house goes to shit. That's not happening. But it was sort of nonchalant. They're like, yeah, you have to take care of it and mow it and make sure it's okay. I'm like, I don't even want to know who the 8 people are. I want nothing to do with any of what's going on over there. So I really don't want to be here at night on 20 acres with a cemetery on the property. I didn't sign up for that.
No, there's only 8.
I don't know. I saw it from the road. There was at least 8. Okay. I don't know. And I'll tell you what also scares me. I actually went where my mother was. She was from Miami, Arizona, small town. Cemetery is rocks and gravel. And we went to go see my grandparents that were there. And it's a poor community. And I look over, and there's a freshly dug grave.
Just the gravel is disturbed.
Like they actually, like someone passed away, and they actually just went into the cemetery at night and buried them in the cemetery. There's no headstone, and it was the craziest thing I'd seen. And so when I say 8, I don't know if there's 16. I don't know if they just started burying people there, and that's just what it is now. I have no idea. I don't know if it was a pet cemetery. It wouldn't change my mind.
My point is if you had to deal with 8 or 16 that would potentially harass you, you could probably take a couple out. You could deal with it.
Yeah. Do I want that to be my evening event now? Is to
well, it only has to happen once or twice.
I don't know how many times I want to take my chairs off the table. Like, is that an everyday thing now? I've got to wake up and they're on the table, and I got to take them down. And
I was thinking they were going to come out of the ground. I'm sorry. I didn't think there was going to be haunting because they weren't under the house; they were to the side of the house.
See, now I think we need to define this a little better. There's poltergeist, there's ghost, and I think what
Yeah.
you're describing are zombies. So those are all
Yes.
different things.
Yeah, zombies are ghouls. I mean,
There you
I don't know
go.
if they come out regularly. So,
now I need to know how to kill those. Is it a silver bullet? Is it you have to take the head off?
It's a silver knife through the heart for a ghoul.
Yes,
For a
and the
zombie, you
bullets
have to go something
are
like that.
werewolves.
For a ghost, it's
So you
salt and
can
burn
see
the
where
front.
I'm at, David. You can see where I'm at. I'm going to be shooting at these things. I don't even know where to get silver bullets. Even if they fail, that's probably my first go-to. Even if it's the wrong thing to do. I don't have enough.
Yeah.
I don't know how to identify them.
You're throwing garlic at the zombie.
What I'm doing is I'm gonna put a salt ring around my house, and that's not gonna do shit. From the movies I watch, all they do is just kick the ring out, and they can walk right through.
Yeah, or blow on it. Yeah.
I'm not sure, but it's I'm gonna ask John this question too. It comes up with and David. The reason I bonded with him is he blew my mind, and I told Ron the same question, and I like the sort of difference between you two guys is. When I didn't first meet David, but it was very new in the relationship. And it was interesting because when you go into any new relationship, you want to know what line can I cross with this guy that I still appear to normal and that the conversation isn't going to scare him. I learned pretty quick that with David, there really is there's no line. There is just conversation. And that's pretty much all it was. And with Ron, there was just never a line.
Well, you guys kind of you were in your formative years together.
Yeah, like he knows the bad. He knows everything that's ever gone on. That if I ran for president or the DA's office, which I can't because I have no credentials to do that. Ron would come up and open up a book and say he pretty much has all the secrets, but he would never do that.
Never. No.
But I talked to David. I go, listen.
Oh, you know what? And before we go on, it was a knee jerk when I typed in my name. I didn't think it was going to show up on the screen.
It's not going to show up on the podcast.
Oh, I know. I figured. And Ron, just so you know, Troy's always known me as Tron. It's in my name. So, and David just happens to be my first name. So, everyone calls me Tron, and they have called me Tron.
Gotcha.
My entire professional life. No one ever used it before as a kid or anything, but yeah. So Troy knows me as Tron, and maybe I'll go back to that because it's I see it slide, it rolls off Troy's tongue a lot easier. So I don't want to tax him any more than this is already. So.
Well, then I'll use Tron. It might be easier.
That's
fine, interchangeably. It'll be like 4 people are on the podcast and not just 3.
Right, and that might make it look like a bigger production.
Yeah, no, definitely it could work. So I asked Tron. I go, listen, if you walked into a bathroom, and there's 3 urinals and 2 of them are broken, and the middle one is empty, with the exception that there's a ghost urinating in that urinal. I asked David, would you go into his space and urinate, or would you wait for him to be finished? And what did you say? And I've asked many people this question. I've never got this particular response, and then I never got the response that Ron told me either. Completely different.
Oh, okay. I'm dying to hear his story. Well, the issue here isn't that there's 2 broken urinals and there's the ghost peeing if I'm going to intrude in his space. The issue is that there's a ghost. It's real, and now you have problems that you have to deal with that are well beyond peeing on the floor of the urinal through the ghost. You really have to go get to church because all of that's real now. It's like you have a lot of things to think about at this point, and it's a deal.
Yeah, so I never thought about it from that perspective. I never thought, well, yeah, if you start seeing something, the bathroom thing's off the table now. It really is that ghosts are real, and that's an issue.
That doesn't solve the immediate need. Right?
Oh no! But the immediate need is
real or not. You still have to pee.
Yeah, but the immediate need now is meaningless. You can wet your pants; it doesn't matter.
Ridiculous.
what you have to deal with is as on a scale beyond your current comprehension. Everything's been shattered. Your whole worldview has either been solidified or has been destroyed to a degree that you can't even. You probably peed your pants anyway at this point.
But Ron's perspective was that if he believes that ghosts are real, seeing one really wouldn't be the issue.
Wouldn't be that big deal.
So from his
What would be an
perspective,
issue?
ghosts are
Then
already real.
Ghosts
Yeah,
are
but
real.
then would you pee through it?
Well, that would be rude, but probably. Here's the issue I would have. So ghosts are real.
Okay.
But they still have to pee? Like, it would seem to me, like when you're a ghost, why would you have to still pee? They don't take in liquid that
Well,
I'm
I was-
aware of, but they still have to eat and sleep. They're ghosts.
It's
What I was
ghostly
thinking
pee.
of, I was
You know,
thinking
like-
of,
Like
I was thinking of the
ectoplasm or some
Disneyland
sort?
ride, Pirates of the Caribbean, when he's drinking and it just goes through his body. Like he's just doing what he thinks is normal, and urinating makes him
that's
feel
fair.
real, even though nothing's
So
actually
maybe he
happening.
doesn't have to. He just thinks he needs to.
He thinks it's 12 o'clock and he
Right.
always pees at 12 o'clock. That's
I like
all
that.
it really is. So that was really my connection with Tron, and I was like, that just kind of blew my mind.
Well, and if it's
And-
not real, that could take forever. How would he know when he's done? So now I got to
Oh.
wait for this guy to finish, and he has no idea.
Well, there is
Take
that.
a step back and go
I'm
right
thinking,
through him.
wouldn't there be like a ghostly tinkle sound? Because he's got to manifest that if he's showing up in the bathroom. He'd know something's wrong if there's no pee. So there's got to be a ghostly pee, and he's got to be like, well, that's it. Waiting for the shake. That's all part of it.
Yeah. Well,
we
the
know
other thing,
and we know it's a guy ghost because he's at the urinal. So there would be a shake.
True.
would it matter if the ghost had a top hat? Like, what
Well,
time is this
I-
guy from? It doesn't matter.
I don't see how that would matter. I mean,
Well,
wherever he is, he knows about urinals. So
Okay.
you can dress him up however you want. He has to be within this time frame that urinals existed.
True.
Well,
Otherwise, he would have been peeing against a tree. Or
Well, let me.
something.
I've never ever seen a movie where the caveman is a ghost.
Yeah, I have to think about that one. I'll have to go through the archives. Maybe there might be a ghostly caveman, but
Because they were a lot smaller, I think, from what I don't remember. I wasn't there at the time, but I
cavemen
think
were
they were
smaller.
like 3 feet tall. I don't think they were very tall at the time.
Cavemen,
Yeah.
like chimps are taller than that. Like
Well, I know Captain Caveman was short,
he was.
but
He
Fred
was.
Flintstone didn't seem to be too short.
But he kind of had a bungalow house made of rock. He didn't really
Yeah.
live in a cave.
Pretty sweet.
Well, the
It would have
educated
been
caveman.
he's more Neolithic than the Paleolithic caveman.
It's a good
So
point.
I would. They were employing dinosaur as machines and workers. So
And as pets.
yeah, but then people have horses, and they have
That's
little
cool.
ponies. So you have a workhorse, a pet pony. So that's I could see how that works.
I think
It's
your
too bad
workhorse
those
is
dinosaurs
a
aren't around.
pony, and they're just like, fuck that guy. Like, he gets to
Oh,
hang out and do nothing, and I got to pull this fucking plow again.
Yeah, I'm sure they're pissed. I mean, ponies do
Right.
got it easy.
Like
Yeah,
the
especially-
dinosaur under the sink, he's got to be pissed at Dino.
Oh. He's getting all the garbage.
Well, that's
He's
true.
got to choke it down.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I was
Yeah.
going to send you. I was going to send you a picture, and I'll do that. I'll put it on the podcast because I drive by this. I drive by this house every day I go to the gym, and it's one of those things where you go, "Is this one of those? It's in plain sight situations." I drive by this house, and there's a mound of dirt. It looks like a shallow grave, and right beside or right in front of the shallow grave is a garden bench. And I was curious to think, this is probably the most obvious thing, is that she's killed someone. I'm assuming it's a woman because she put a garden bench in front of the shallow grave, and a man wouldn't do that. We'd invest more time in making sure that maybe the mound of grave site isn't in front of the house, it's behind the house. Well, of course that it would be flat.
Yeah. Or at least it would be, flat level.
And you'd put some seed. So over time it would look more like it's part of the landscaping. And I was curious. No
And
one
that
has
green
called the
spray
police.
stuff.
Like, so when do you actually knock on the door and see if someone's still there? Or you just assume that mound that's being covered by a garden bench is just legitimate?
Well, I think that's interesting that
yeah.
you immediately went to shallow grave. So a lot of people might have seen that pile and thought, wow, that's a lovely flower bed. You immediately thought somebody's buried under there, and that lady probably killed him.
Well, it's literally a mound of dirt. It's not. There's nothing floral about it.
If I may say, Troy did say he thought someone was buried. However, you came to the conclusion that perhaps she killed the person that was buried.
Well,
Troy just assumed someone was buried. The cause of death or whatever, something else.
I've already been implicated into the murder and the burial site.
Right, I'm out of this one. Although, I wouldn't have put it in the front of the house either. Not like that. But is the bench wood or is it stone?
No, it's iron.
It's iron. Oh, okay. Well, then it's not. Yeah, it's not a headstone. It doesn't work. It doesn't serve that function. It's probably just a remembrance spot. It could be a dog.
Well, you'd assume that the remembrance would be for the person who's buried somewhere, just not on the property.
Yeah, but if you bury someone on the property, your house becomes a cemetery. So if it was allowed by the city, then you don't pay taxes anymore, like forever.
I don't want to go too deep into this, but then how many bodies makes a cemetery versus it's
just one? I think
it's just one.
I think so.
I think
Ron might know better.
1.5.
Would you say half? 1.5?
Yeah.
1.5.
How do you bury half? Like
I'll show you.
Chainsaw again?
He'll show you.
Oh, okay.
You're just a torso anyway.
It's easier than you'd think.
That's right. It's easier.
Well, we only had 3 bodies. Troy and I both wanted the tax break.
No,
we just
right,
split it right in the middle.
1.5.
Right in the middle.
Would you split it vertically or horizontally?
It depends on how much time you've got.
Yeah.
If it's a still, we're looking for a good chainsaw. The one that was in the.
Yeah, if you have a steel like Voorhees, you can go vertical. But if you've got the Black & Decker electric that I've got, you usually go horizontal.
The one you cut ham with, you probably want to go right down the middle.
Yeah.
You don't.
Fleshy... like one of these things?
Yeah.
No, that'll make slices. Not that ham, right?
See, I was thinking maybe spiral sliced.
That would be interesting. Yeah,
well, can you imagine? That would probably be better to bury.
It's interesting. Just for anybody listening, this is what the podcast's supposed to be for this particular episode.
For
just
anyone
so you're aware.
Listening.
For the one person that's paying attention, I'm actually really glad that Ron's on the call because
he lends legitimacy.
Well, he's an attorney, so anything he says is smarter and legitimate, and he knows what he's talking about.
Right.
He's going to keep you and I out of trouble because we had this idea, and you can reject that it was a we and not an I, Tron. But the crime confusion kit.
Oh, this is a great idea. I still think it's good. I'm afraid of speaking about it in public for obvious reasons, but
this is for entertainment purposes only. It's for entertainment purposes only.
Right, that's right. We don't want to confuse anybody.
No, this isn't a real crime channel. This is just a imaginary what you'd be doing if you were drinking around a fire.
But the crime confusion kit can be still real. It's just not used for what it's named for.
Right. So
it's for entertainment.
So I would say I've always had this idea. So I'll go off of another one, which I thought was interesting. If you happened upon someone in the street who had passed away, and you had a business card of someone you didn't like, could you put that business card under the body?
Well, of course you could. No, I can see the gears in Ron's head are turning.
Well, there's, do you mean morally, ethically?
We're off the table on those things.
Yeah, ethics. What?
Yeah.
The crime confusion kit is similar in that if there was a crime committed, and let's say it's not a horrendous crime, someone just stole the television and all your money in your house, and this crime confusion kit, depending on the package you purchased.
But that's a different kit.
That's a different kit.
Yeah.
It's a different kit. In this particular kit, the kit would explode like a bomb on the inside, like a fogger would be for like fleas, except it's business cards, it's fingernails, it's hair samples
Yeah.
from polar bears, bald eagle talons.
Right.
And we've through Ron's conversation, there are such things as dolphin whiskers.
Oh,
which I was not aware of.
Yeah, so he called me on it. I was saying we could put some dolphin whiskers inside this crime kit so that when the police come, they're going to be like, what on earth is the gray bottleneck
Yeah.
dolphin?
the Ganges River dolphin. Why is there any evidence of this in here?
I don't know that would be a bottlenecked dolphin.
No.
Probably a bottlenose of some sort.
You've
A
not heard the
bottleneck would be
bottleneck?
hilarious, though. I would love to see that.
That's why it
Giant
makes it more
head,
rare.
tiny little neck.
Thus the confusion. How does that even exist?
That's fair. Yeah, that would be an interesting.
I like the whiskers. Yeah. If I think I've read that they're born with like little mustaches,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where the whiskers made. So it not only do you have that, but it's a subadult or a juvenile dolphin who's involved.
Born with little mustaches?
Well, I don't know if they look like.
They're born with little fedoras and Axe body spray, and they just act like douchebags until they fully mature. They're like, "Where you going, honey? Check out my bottlenose."
Bottleneck.
Bottleneck. Check out my bottleneck.
It's European.
Fair enough.
It's very expensive. You just can't get those anywhere.
You can't get it.
The other thing I wanted to talk to you about, we have a conversation next week with a band called Mojave Gray. Fantastic. One of the guys in the band is a vegan. And I went to the grocery store and I happened upon, I don't know if you guys can see, this thing is called tuna. So I was offended when I walked past it because it is a plant-based tuna. Yeah, so that's the part of marketing we wanted to talk about, which is I would never put in.
No.
Exactly right. Yeah, that's just bad marketing. If it was like tune yes or something like that, but already telling you in the name you probably shouldn't buy it is bad.
Yeah.
The issue I have with Tuno is the marketing, the branding allows the company to produce a shitty product like this. The marketing amplifies the product through the naming. So the issue amongst many things I have is that this also reminds me of a time that hasn't happened yet, which is when we no longer have tuna in the ocean. We are now forced to eat a processed plant-based tuna. So the issue with it, and I saw a lot of reviews on it, it doesn't smell like tuna and it doesn't taste like tuna and it doesn't have the texture of tuna. It literally is.
It's tuna.
Yeah. No, I get it. But if it's to tuna, is that right? Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, so it's terrible that it's actually in an aisle with tuna where there's 1,000 different types of tuna that you can eat.
And that's what bothers me. That's what bothers me, though, about vegan stuff, because that is clearly, if you're vegan and you're looking for tuna, you already know what tuna is. You're going to go find it. That is completely marketed as if it's real tuna in a can that looks similar, in writing that looks similar. So that's just designed to get people who are mistaken and grab it and then eat it and get upset. It's not for people who know what it is. It's so just to piss people off.
So what Ron said is exactly where I would go, which is if their mission is to take 1 million tuna cans off the shelf. And in replace, you buy this tuna. The issue I have is that once you open this can and you taste it, you're going to hate it. And you're going to go, if this is what saving the ocean is supposed to be like, well, then fuck it. I'm going to get the regular tuna and I'll figure another way out to not harm the tuna, but it's not going to be buying a can of this. And what this should be called on the marketing side is I would really rather, and this is going to scare you too, because I saw this at the store as well. If this were a plant-based spread, and it was the plant-based spread is tuna flavored, then I would say, okay, I don't know what that means, but if it's a spread and it's a plant-based spread, don't mimic, because it's supposed to look like filet, and it's not. It's basically really, yeah, it's really strange looking pieces of stuff that doesn't even resemble a tuna fillet. But that's the other question is, so you can't start this now. I mean, you got to start this with babies and go, this is what tuna tastes like. No, they're 100% all in. But
it's like the joke: a CrossFitter, an atheist, and a vegan walk into a bar. I know because they told me the second they walked in. They can't do anything without telling everybody.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I know someone who's vegan. Actually, Tron and I both know someone who was vegan, and that particular person ate chips all the time. The worst food you can eat. She's like, well, I'm a vegan. But she's eating potato chips and everything that's completely terrible for you.
Yeah.
But she stood her ground on being vegan. So they're an interesting group. The only way that I could look at this, and we're going to talk about it on Monday, is if you had this tuna and it's terrible. Is it better for someone? Is it better for Tuno to say, listen, we're going to, instead of selling you this can of tuna the way it is today, we're actually going to sell it to you pre-made the way we think it should taste, the way a chef would say, this is the closest we can come with ingredients to make it taste like tuna salad, versus having someone who's not experienced in making it. Give them a fighting chance, and why don't you make it for us and give us the best possible flavor you can, closest to tuna salad, which was most people use this for. The other idea,
if you're vegan, you find other food that you enjoy, and you don't try to mimic hamburgers or hot dogs or tuna. You just find beans of some sort, tofu, tempeh, but you don't carve it into a goddamn tuna can and go, Tuno, it's the same. It's not. Yeah.
It could be a soy log. It could be whatever you need it to. Well, I'm just saying you can't call it chorizo. You got to call it something that's not chorizo. It's something else. So to Ron's point, if you want to make something a hot dog and it's not a hot dog, then just eat a hot dog, because what you're eating isn't a hot dog. It's nothing. It doesn't taste like it. It doesn't have the bite to it. If you
don't want to eat the hot dog, don't.
Right. The other thing I was thinking about is, what if instead of them putting, and this is where I think Tron would really understand, is instead of putting the tuna, because there's a cost associated with creating a fake tuna paste. There is the operating costs and the material costs. If what they really want to do is replace you buying tuna and then buying this instead, part of me says, well, why don't you just create the can and on the inside put a fishing net on the inside, put something environmental on the inside that impacts tuna more than fishing. Maybe it could be the fishing efficiencies. It could be we farm tuna efficiently or differently, but we don't create a fake tuna. So instead, you're buying a can as a symbol and saying, I was going to buy 2 tuna cans. I'm going to buy one, and then I'm going to buy this other one. And everything in here is going to be associated with why fishing for tuna is bad. Because if you want to support it and you don't want them to continue to make fake products, then I'll at least take this novelty can that's got some fishing net inside, and maybe there's a tuna doll that if you put water on it expands to 10 feet. I don't know. But there is no good way to buy this and be okay with it. There's no sense in it. But we're gonna talk about that on Monday, because it is a marketing discussion, and I'm not sure how this company succeeds. It's pretty terrible. They did a really good job. But here's the issue. The issue is, just like I do in the automotive industry, and I've been in it for a while, is that sometimes when new products come out, you'll sell them for less than cost. And it's just because you need to get the product out there. I did that with Toyota when we had Prius. I think Toyota was losing money on every Prius when it came out, because they wanted the technology to come out, and they were willing to take that. So I'm guessing that they're losing money on every can they sell until they can create a profit and grow this. The issue I have is this is in Texas. This might as well be in a trash can somewhere. There is no Texan buying fake tuna. That's just not happening. This is the wrong market. This should be somewhere in Berkeley, up in Northern California, Portland. Actually, they may even be from Portland if I'm looking at the can correctly. Well, it's made in Thailand, and the distribution is in North Carolina.
What I think they should do, create a shadow corporation, and the LLC or incorporation is in India. Have the entire market base in India, like for the corporate documents.
Mm-hmm.
Sell it as tuna, but just package the cheapest tuna you can find. Now, sooner or later, people are going to think this tuna was amazing, but it's going to take at least like a year before somebody tests it and realizes it's just tuna. By then, you got all kind of insurance, you got all kind of money, then you just disappear. You know how long it's going to take them to get a court date in Mumbai? Take that money, put it away, you're gone.
So what you're saying,
massive fraud.
What you're saying is that you sell a plant-based tuna.
No.
But it actually has the cheapest quality real tuna on the inside.
Yes, you sell a tuna-based tuna, but market it and sell it as a plant-based tuna.
So that's like saying it's 100% tuna.
Yes.
I see. No, I love that idea. So this is probably the best plant-based tuna I've ever had until I discover it's actually tuna.
Right?
Oh, well, look, McDonald's. I didn't even know McDonald's didn't have that. When I was saying 100% tuna, I was kind of mimicking sort of the narrative about McDonald's not using 100% beef, and Taco Bell doesn't use a. So what is that other, 70%? Is it? I don't know what it is. I have no idea. That's what I'm saying. It's like, that's right. Of the meat that's in this hamburger, the portion that's real meat is real meat. 100% of the 30%.
100% of the meat that's in there is meat.
I like it. So I knew Rod would go directly to this more mischievous plan, which is to set up a shell corporation in India and actually use the cheap. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, doesn't even need to be real tuna. It could be anchovies mixed with the poorest quality,
and I can tell you that is not the first nefarious plan I thought of.
No, of course not.
Because that one is just money. The first thing I thought is you could rig all of those to explode as soon as somebody opens them and kill everybody in the room, because I don't care if the people who buy tuna are systematically eliminated. But that's not something that you can talk about in mixed company without getting a look or two.
No, so I actually thought, I've not, because I'm going to do it on the podcast. I haven't opened it yet, but I thought I was going to go. I didn't know Ron was going to go that far. I suppose I could get there. I was just thinking that you make these cans so incredibly difficult to open that when they open, they get on you, and you're like, "This is too fucking." I'm not going to do it because I stay in my clothes every time I do it. I wasn't going. They explode. Interesting though, this is heavier than normal tuna. It's much denser than tuna is. And
what is it actually? What's the first ingredient? Is it soy?
Textured soy protein, water, sea salt, yeast extract, seaweed powder, potassium chloride, DHA algal oil, and it contains soy. Well, I mean, no shit, it contains soy.
Yes.
It says textured soy protein at the front, and then on the bottom it goes contains soy. Just in case you didn't get the first time, in big black block letters it says contains soy.
100% of the soy is actually soy.
The only thing that's soy or seaweed is the labeling ingredients for tuna. Yeah. So the interesting thing too is at the top of the can it goes great new flavor, great new texture. And I'm thinking it already looks like shit. And what did it look like before it had a new flavor and great new texture? The only thing natural in here is the sea salt that they add. So it's interesting. But we'll talk about that on Monday. So really interesting on the marketing side. So love the Tuno connection. If you guys want me to send you a packet, just let me know. I've got a few samples here. If you guys want to, Tron's a no. Ron is a no. Yeah. So I have another one. This one is even more interesting. This one's called Unmeat Fish Free. And it's like they didn't have a marketing company because it says it's tuna style flakes in water with salt added, and it's a disturbing picture of what you think those. I've never referred to tuna as tuna flakes before, so now they've created a new description of what tuna is, and they're flakes now. So this one is again made in the Philippines. I'm thinking that I've got two products that Ron has already developed because these seem to be going down that same path, but they're not actually companies in the U.S. They're actually in the Philippines. This is probably just a very poor grade of bottom feeder tuna.
You ever try to sue somebody in Cebu? Good luck.
It's from Chernobyl. A lot of iron. It's good. This tuna.
Yeah, a lot of iron.
A lot of zinc.
This is an aside, but have you seen that they're doing tours of Chernobyl? So creepy. And you have to go through like a decontamination process and everything when you leave, and you can only be there a certain amount of time. I don't get it. Yes. From what I've heard, enjoy the tuna.
Is that a bottleneck dolphin over there?
Is that a bottleneck dolphin? That explains so much.
It's why this tuna is magnetic. Now I understand. The meat's it glows when you eat it, so you know where it's at. Yeah. Let me give you. Yeah, the tuna.
You might as well call the one don't eat.
I think. Yeah, I mean, you might as well. I mean, at that point, you might buy it if it said it tastes like shit tuna.
Yeah.
I'd probably buy it because that's what it said on the can instead of tuna. So the other topic we're going to have, and again, this is a conversation for normal people like you, not people in the marketing and brand. We're up here a little bit, but
well,
no, I meant that. Can I interest you in some?
You. Tron and I'll just stay down here bottom feeding while you guys help save the world.
So I have two topics left for you guys. The other one is the I didn't talk about it with Tron. I talked about it with Ron. There's another narrative that we're going to be talking about, which is how do you, if you're an agency and you're a marketing agency, and then the state of California comes back to you and says, "Hey, listen, the marriage rates in California are dropping. We want to market marriage as a lifestyle, and men aren't getting married. They've declined that lifestyle now. What do you think the first issue is going to be when you write down a proposal and say, how do you convince men to get married from a marketing perspective? So part of my example, Tron, is I know, but we're going. I may have you guys on once we have this conversation. I have somebody that's going to be on that is a sociologist that is going to talk about the institution of marriage. And I talked to her briefly and said, part of it might be a campaign that says, are you tired of doing whatever you want, whenever you want, with whoever you want? Maybe that's your thing. Maybe you want to have your weekend planned for you to go to places you absolutely wouldn't go on your own and meet people you don't like for a long time on
Maybe
a
you do
Sunday.
like antiques and just didn't know it. I doubt that. You're
Yeah,
sitting around and you're thinking, my wallet's full and my balls are empty. How do I switch this around?
yeah. The other one I was thinking about was, maybe you don't know all the things that you do wrong all the time. Maybe you're missing a few things. Maybe there's some things you're just not aware of that you just don't do well. And maybe you need that to be verbalized to you on a regular basis.
Yeah. I
Um,
didn't know I had achieved so much being so stupid.
I mean, I'll
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
that, that's
Work
new
on
to
the
me as
breathing.
well. So that's part of the marketing, which is you could take a humorous angle, or you could take a real, like, thought provoking angle towards it. And I was like, I don't know that I would touch that in any other way except humor. Um, we've gone on these. I would love to do a clinic too if we were doing a marketing study on this, and trying to figure out what the issue is. And I can tell you, I taught my son a very good lesson about this. And again, this is still marketing because I am marketing marriage to my son as he grows up. But I'm also teaching him the traps that you're going to get into. And I almost got into one the other day. And I'm in the kitchen. No, not. I need this to be. No, 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 no. Nothing like that. Nothing like that. I was in the kitchen, and she had gone away for a while, and I thought it'd be really nice if she came home to a clean kitchen or a clean house. And so I ran the dishwasher, and she comes home the next morning and empties the dishwasher. And she goes, "You know that wooden spoons don't go in the dishwasher." And I immediately, that's something that they read somewhere, like they have a book. Yeah, no, because if I say I knew, then I must have done it for a particular reason.
It was
Why would
malicious.
I know? So that's the trap. Is like, yeah, I did it, of course, because I'm trying to spice up our. We haven't fought in like 6 months, and we've been seeming to get along really well. I thought I said 6 months,
Yeah.
but after this podcast, it might have to start over again. Um, but maybe I've never done that before, and I thought we'd spice things up, and I'd put something in the dishwasher that doesn't belong there. I no, of course I don't know that a wooden spoon's supposed to not go in the dishwasher. I have no idea. But she phrased it with, they don't.
Yes.
And I'm like, absolutely don't say that. I absolutely don't know that they don't go in there.
Or you'll
And
say, you know,
well, the issue, and I talked to, I don't need a therapist to tell me that, because the way she said it's so obvious that it was frustrating to her that there was a wooden spoon in a dishwasher. And then Ron, the analytical genius that he is like, well, when is it bad for the wooden spoon? Is it right away? Is it 10 years from now? Is it 5 years from now? When does the wooden spoon actually become unuseful because it's been in the dishwasher? And they hold it fine.
well, and
Chopsticks.
if she's going to
Chopsticks
say
you put.
something like, yeah, then the answer that you should give her is just, if you don't want me to do the dishes, just say so. Because what you're saying to me is that I did it wrong on purpose. You know?
But turn the
That's just
conversation
insulting.
around. If there's 100 things in the dishwasher and one of those things was a spoon, that means 99% of what I did was fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, immediately the 99% of the things that were in there correctly. The one thing that wasn't is going to be the issue. Yeah. So that's the whole part about marketing. Marriage is, are you okay with doing almost a few things right? No, I don't know that I like this arrangement anymore. I think I'm okay. But joking aside, obviously it's fantastic. We're all married, so that's good, and we're all alive, so that's good too.
Plus,
But so what I'd like to do is I would love to have you guys on these conversations every week to summarize sort of the marketing and branding conversations that we're having with these athletes and these musicians, and get a sort of a layman's sort of approach to this. And
yeah, that'd be
again,
fun.
it's we'll
Me and
bring it.
Prawn, the dummies. You two layman dumbasses. I'm gonna talk to the
The
grown-ups, and then I'll come pat you two on the head. Thanks, buddy.
I think part of it is that I have so many stories that will relate to Ron and I sort of growing up in the same space, that these stories make sense on a lot of different levels. Ron was in Ron, and I'll end it on this because it's one of the most amazing stories I think I have with Ron. We were, I know you're going to remember this.
This scares me every time you say it.
We
Well, there's some really bad ones to pick, so
there's a lot that we had this fraternity brother. His name was Ben. Ben loved to make pies, and Ben was a really good pie maker for some reason. I don't know where he made the pies. They were fantastic.
here we go.
And I think he was, because he didn't live in the house, so I think he was making the pies. And we were driving back to the fraternity house, and Ben had made a pie, and we're like, we need to obviously you need to drink some milk with pie. There's just no question pie and milk go together. Ron and I and a few other people were in the car. We drive it to the gas station. It's late, and immediately Ron and I see this car in front of the gas station, and we're like, that place is getting held up. There's no question. And we were sort of joking, but it seemed obvious to us that car shouldn't have been there. But
Yeah,
it was just something that we rattled off and go,
they're
yeah.
totally getting robbed.
So I get out of the car, I go inside, and I open up I pick up the milk. It's like a gallon of milk, and I pick it up, and there's a stream of milk coming out of the milk can, like it had been shot at. And I looked it up. I'm like, well, I'm not getting that one. So I put it down, and I get another milk, and I go to the counter, and it's in this particular case, this guy was Indian, owned the gas station, and he was calling the police that he had just gotten robbed. And
The car that we
he's
saw.
talking. The car that we saw, he's talking to the police, and he's ringing me up for the milk, and he doesn't miss a beat. Like, it's like $4. I give him 10. He gives me the change back while he's talking to the cops. Like, it happens every day. And I walk back to the car, and in just typical fashion, I mean, Ron already knew. I'm like, they just got held up, and then we just got in the car, went back to the house, and then had some pie. Those things happen more often than I could tell you. It's basically,
That was shot.
it was literally out of a movie, and I swear on my life, when I picked up the milk, this big bead of milk pops out of the can, and I put it down. I'm like, forget it. Picked up another one, and he just rang me up. It was so bizarre. But that's not even the beginning. I mean, it was an amazing. No, it's like it's not
In a
behind
cooler.
glass. It was just there's a it's a raised, but I had to bend down to pick it up, so I didn't see the bottom of where the milk was. I don't know. The first one I picked up is the one that was leaking, and I just put it down. I'm like, fuck. So then I just picked up another milk bottle, and because it didn't dawn on me until I got back into the car, and then when I heard the the guy behind the counter call the cops, and he's like giving them a description and what car they were in, and he's like, that'll be 415, and he switches his voice from very excited to I own this store, and you owe me $4 for this milk. And it was just an exchange. It's like, you want your receipt? I'm like, no, I'm good. He
It
gets
was
back on the
not his
phone.
first rodeo.
No, this guy has seen it probably every day. It was just so bizarre. But never really occurred us to not do those things. We just would go back to the same place. It didn't matter to us. It was no,
I don't
I
think he would even remember getting held up.
if we
He
said,
would
"You
need
remember that
more
time?"
information, like which time, when was it, what year, what day, how much money did they get? I don't know. Like the guy was completely unfazed by it.
No, he just did his deal and that was it. And walked into the car, went back, had our pie, and made fun of Ben for making pie. Like, what guy makes pies?
Good. Yeah, I don't know what's more. Is that an indictment on us, society? Like that it was just like, oh, that guy's getting robbed. He wasn't
He did
thrown
seem to
off by
be.
it. We weren't thrown off by it.
Yeah, it would have been different if I'd walked in and people were on the floor, and I'm like, "What's going on?"
You
Um,
would not. You would have walked in, you would have been like, that's weird. And then you would have gone and picked up the milk, and everybody would be staring at you going, is this guy just going to try to buy milk? And there's going to be a guy with a gun that you didn't see. He's going to be like, what is he doing? You'd be like, I
well,
need milk.
well, now that I think about it, I don't know if the guy behind the counter actually worked there. He might have shot the actual store owner, picked
Yeah,
up
he
the
probably wouldn't
phone
have been on the
to
store
hide the
or
fact
the
that
phone. Yeah.
he had just shot someone, and he just seemed so good at the register. I just assumed he worked there. Maybe he was proficient at it.
It's the hiding in plain sight again. Maybe he got proficient so that it would look like,
I
and he
see.
just is on a rampage holding up gas stations. He has his own gas and sip bowling shirt.
I didn't think about that. Maybe I never checked the news the next day because I didn't really care. We had our pie and we were fine. We wouldn't care. We had
We're
we
looking for
wouldn't.
these men and for questioning. Like, I don't know. What do you
No,
look
we
like?
we had
I don't know.
we had some really we had some really good experiences. There was I'll end it on this piece because it's actually really funny. I think Ron was actually, I don't know if he was leading the house at the time, but I had a friend of mine named Mark. We were at our fraternity house in the backyard, and we were building these bombs. And right next to our fraternity house was this dive of a hotel. Like it's where you it's where you go when you get out of jail and you need a place to stay, or
Rooms
you've
by the
been down
week.
on your luck for a while. You move into this hotel place, and it's the strangest people that are in that building. And we had built this bomb out of gunpowder and 2 liter bottle. And I think Ron was in the pool area, the playing
Like
pool
like billiards. Yeah.
billiards. He's playing using the billiards room, and this bomb goes off. All the car alarms go off. There's a
Shut the
huge amount of
windows.
there's a huge amount of smoke everywhere. Mark and I run through the house. Ron and the president at the time, they just knew the cops were coming. You didn't see us, and we just vanished. And then the cops come and talk to Ron, and what did you say, Ron, in typical fashion?
I don't know what you're talking about. He's like, there was a bomb and there were windows. There's smoke behind me. And I'm like, I haven't heard anything. Can you describe it? Was it a loud boom or was it more of a thump? He's like, you didn't hear anything? Because all of your neighbors have called. And I'm like, I don't know. Haven't heard anything. Smoke
I can
billowing
see, I can
behind
see,
me.
I can see Ron moving like the smoke out of his face while he's talking.
I don't know what you're talking about. That had to have been a mistake. It's probably our neighbors.
It shuttered the place, Tron. Every car. It was summertime. It's just what you do. Like this house was that wasn't the first time. That was many times. We had I would say there were, if they had done a PSA on what not to do, we would have done it anyway. We had you remember Justin?
Oh, yeah.
So Justin was this straight laced, didn't drink, went to bed at 9. Very much. There's something, I don't know if there's something wrong with him. There wasn't, but he just a different style of guy. And Mark and I wanted to build a bomb out of a padlock. And back then you could buy gunpowder and fuses, and we got this padlock, and we were moving alcohol across the county line. So we got this padlock and we shoved in this gunpowder, and it's just so stupid. Mark and I are we you know that it's like a master lock with a U on it, and there's a hole where it goes in there. We put a bunch of gunpowder in there, and then we put the fuse in there, and then Mark and I are trying to shut the lock because it wouldn't fit because there's too much gunpowder in there. Uh, no, but it could have. There could have been some friction between us pushing it and the gunpowder against metal, where it could have.
You think?
It could have happened that way. So we build this thing, and Mark and I are too afraid to light it because we don't know how fast or what's going to happen. And Justin comes up the stairs, and he's just, just Justin, and he's oblivious to a lot of things like this. And we say, "Hey, Justin," and he was younger than us at the time. Said, "Hey, we want you to go downstairs and light this inside the volleyball court because there's sand." He's like, "Okay." And then we stayed upstairs while we watched him go down there. He lit the fuse, and it was the biggest bass explosion you just heard it. There was this boom, like a deep bass boom. Again, car alarms go off. The apartments next to us are, "What's that noise?" And then there's Mark. Mark and I run through, upstairs, but then cops have come. What I didn't understand, it was just a movie. There was shrapnel inside the brick where we were standing. Like, there was shrapnel everywhere. Like, we didn't think shrapnel. We just thought boom, like noise. This was shrapnel. And like Justin was behind, and you could see like the bottom of the master lock stuck in the wall. It was insane. But yeah, those were amazing times. I don't know how I bring that back to marketing or brand, but that's how we bring it back. Imagine making a bomb out of plant-based protein. It's just not going to work.
I think they did. That was a bomb.
That is actually, and technically it is a bomb. So I'm going to have you guys back. I think this is a good way for us to talk about some of the things we're talking about on the podcast about if the topics are if they're too high level, then we'll figure out another way. We'll talk about how to make applesauce or
three things.
I think it's Jello, right? It was in that movie. We'll make Jello. But yeah, I think it's fantastic that you guys are on here. Super smart, really funny guys. I had a ton of time laughing with Tron at work, and the funny. Well, we weren't, and that's the thing about. I had such a hard time. If I went downstairs and saw Ron playing pool, then my day was over. I had my backpack on. I'm ready to go out to my class, and I see Ron down there. I'm like, well, maybe I'll just skip my first class. And then we go get wings, and then the day's over. And it's like, well, what I really miss? Oh, I don't know.
We'll get them next time.
It's only tomorrow. It's always tomorrow. I'll go next time. I'll borrow someone's notes.
That'll be fine.
But I had well, I'll tell you what I went. So I went to school with my wife. So she was the one who corrected sort of the behavior on studying. Not in the sense that you would know. I actually paid her to go to Spanish class with me, and she sat right next to it. I would just look at her paper the entire time, and she would take all the notes. I basically had a tutor that I was in a relationship with, and when we had tests, I would just look over, and she would like move her paper so I could see it. She got me through college for sure. Ron almost didn't get me through college, but that was I always
she got you through in spite of me.
she was working very hard to make sure that I got out, but it was funny. But I'll tell you, Ron is probably one of the most loyal, funny guys you could have. I remember,
Well, thank you.
I remember being in, we would go to these parties, and there was a guy that always would start a fight, and you would just look out into the sea of people, and you see this commotion, and you're like, oh fuck, we know who that is. So we're the guys that always go to wherever that thing is happening. We solve the situation. But Ron was the only guy. I'm not saying we hazed, but we didn't make it easy for some pledges. Ron was a pledge when I was active, and we tried to make Ron do stuff, and he would just go no. And then you look at Ron, and you're like, well, all right, well, that's okay, I guess. And then you just walk away. We can go to Ron. You're not gonna do anything. You're not gonna make Ron do whatever he doesn't want to do. But
I did almost everything. It was just a couple, like, one guy wanted me to do like calisthenics. He's like, drop and give me 20. And I was like, no, that's not going to happen. And he goes, no, seriously. And I was like, oh, seriously? No, I'm not going to do that. And he goes, yeah, I was just kidding. I was like, yeah.
That just wasn't going to happen.
That just wasn't going to happen.
Ron is very much, at least when I knew him, I was telling my wife this too. We were at it's actually happened yesterday. I was actually driving out of my house, and there's a truck in front of me. And we stop at a stoplight, and the guy is like doing it, flipping me off. And I look at him, and I go, no, I have Texas plates. He's in front of me. I don't know who he is. He doesn't live in my neighborhood, but I followed him to the light, and I'm behind him, and he's flipping what I appear is flipping me off. And not, much older, and I don't want to go to jail. I was going to say again, that was a long time ago, but you can get into a situation by doing something you shouldn't be doing. So normally at my age, I go through a checklist. I go, maybe he wasn't flipping me off. Maybe there was a car that came by, a neighbor across the street. Maybe he's got his phone on with a video and he's flipping his friend off. I'm late for work, or flipping the radio off. And I'm going through this checklist of, maybe he had a cramp. I have no idea. Maybe he
tried to blow up a master lock and he was left mangled with only one.
Maybe he lived in an apartment complex in Arizona, and somehow the shrapnel knocked off all his fingers except one. I don't know. But I went through my checklist, and I go, it's probably just miscommunication. And that's probably what it is. And I was telling my wife this story yesterday, and then somehow we got into the conversation again, and she goes, yeah, but you were ready to kill that guy because he flipped you off. I'm like, no. I said, I went through my checklist. I went through all the possibilities, and I came up with, it's probably just my imagination. It's probably not at me, and then I let it go.
Sure.
Well, so I'll just say thank you guys for being on. Appreciate your time. We will get you on some of the next podcasts that happen every week, and hope to see you guys next week if we can.
Here I find